AITA, for saying no when my husband tried to make his brother our child's guardian without asking me. I, 34F, just had a massive fight with my husband Ryan, 36M, that has spiraled into him moving out temporarily and both our families taking sides. People are calling me paranoid, controlling, and disrespectful to family. I'm genuinely questioning whether I overreacted. Ryan and I have been married for 6 years and have a 3-year-old daughter, Sophie. We've been talking about updating our will since Sophie was born, but like most people, we kept putting it off. Then my coworker's husband died suddenly in a car accident at 40, and it was a wake-up call. We needed to get our affairs in order. 2 months ago, we finally made an appointment with an estate planning attorney. Before the meeting, we had what I thought was a casual conversation about guardianship for Sophie if something happened to both of us. I was thinking my sister Jen, I said. She's great with kids, financially stable, and Sophie adores her. Ryan seemed uncomfortable. Actually, I already talked to my brother about it. Connor said he'd be honored to be Sophie's guardian. I was surprised. You talked to Connor before talking to me? He's family. I knew he'd say yes. And he's my brother, it makes sense. But we should discuss this together before asking anyone. This is a huge decision. I know, and we can still discuss it, but I already told Connor he'd be the guardian. I can't go back on that now, he's excited about it. Red flags were waving, but I tried to stay calm. Ryan, we need to talk about this seriously. Connor is single, works weird hours as a freelance photographer, and I don't think he has the stability to raise a child. My sister is married, has a stable job, owns a house, and already has 2 kids. She's the obvious choice. Connor is my brother. Family is family. He'd step up if he needed to. Being someone's brother doesn't automatically make them the right guardian. This is about what's best for Sophie. My brother is what's best for Sophie. He loves her. You're being ridiculous. We tabled the discussion, but the tension lingered. I decided to do what I should have done initially, actual research on choosing a guardian. Everything I read emphasized considering stability, lifestyle, values, childcare experience, and having serious conversations with potential guardians about expectations. I also learned that naming a guardian requires both parents' agreement. Ryan couldn't just unilaterally decide Connor would be Sophie's guardian without my consent. Armed with this information, I approached Ryan again. We need to make a list of criteria for guardianship and evaluate both Connor and Jen objectively. He was immediately defensive. I already told Connor. I'm not going back on my word. Your word doesn't matter if I don't agree. This requires both of us to consent. So, you're saying your sister is better than my brother? That's what this is really about, isn't it? You think your family is superior. This isn't about superiority. It's about who's best equipped to raise our daughter. The argument escalated until Ryan stormed out. We didn't speak about it for a week. Then came the attorney appointment. I thought we'd discuss options and come to an agreement. Instead, Ryan showed up with a drafted guardianship document already filled out, naming Connor as sole guardian. What is this? I asked, looking at the document. I had my buddy Steve draw it up. He's a lawyer. I figured we could save time. The estate attorney, a woman named Patricia, looked uncomfortable. Mr. Harrison, guardianship nominations require both parents' agreement. Did you discuss this document with your wife? We've discussed it, Ryan said, which was technically true but wildly misleading. I don't agree with this, I said clearly. I want to nominate my sister Jennifer. Patricia nodded. Then we need to have a discussion about your options. Both parents must consent to the guardianship nomination, or the will won't include one, and the court will decide if something happens to you both. Ryan was furious. For the next hour, we went back and forth about Connor versus Jen. Patricia tried to guide us through considerations: financial stability, lifestyle, relationship with the child, willingness and ability to take on the responsibility, proximity to our current home, and Sophie's school and friends. On almost every metric, Jen was the obvious choice. She's a teacher, married to an accountant, owns a home in a good school district, has 2 kids, ages 5 and 7, who Sophie plays with regularly and lives 20 minutes from us. Connor is 42, never married, rents an apartment, travels frequently for photography gigs, and sees Sophie maybe once every 2 months. But Ryan kept insisting, "He's my brother. He's family. That's what matters." Finally, Patricia said something that changed the conversation. "Mr. Harrison, I need to ask, have you discussed this responsibility with your brother? Is he aware of what guardianship entails? Has he confirmed he's willing and able to take this on?" "Of course he is. I told you," he said. "He'd be honored." "When you told him, did you discuss specifics? Like the fact that he'd need to potentially relocate to maintain stability for Sophie? That he'd need to provide full-time childcare or arrange for it? That he'd be responsible for all educational, medical, and financial decisions? That this is a permanent commitment, not temporary?" Ryan hesitated. "I mean, we didn't get into all the details, but he knows what it means." "I'd recommend having a detailed conversation with him about expectations," Patricia suggested. "Many people say they'd be honored without fully understanding the reality." "And Mrs. Harrison, the same with your sister." I had already talked to Jen about it in detail. She and her husband had discussed it seriously and confirmed they'd be willing and able to take Sophie if something happened to us. They'd even talked about which room would be Sophie's, how they'd handle the transition, and what support they'd need from our life insurance. Ryan admitted he'd mentioned it to Connor in passing at a family barbecue. "Hey, if anything happens to us, you take care of Sophie, right?" And Connor had apparently said, "Of course, man. Absolutely." That wasn't the same as a serious conversation about actual guardianship. Patricia gave us homework. Both of us needed to have detailed conversations with our potential guardians and come back with more information. Ryan was sullen the entire drive home. "You made me look like an idiot in front of a lawyer." "I didn't make you look like anything. You tried to unilaterally decide who would raise our daughter without actually consulting me or even having a real conversation with your brother about what it entails. You just hate Connor. You've always looked down on him." "I don't hate Connor. I barely know Connor. That's part of the problem. He's not involved enough in Sophie's life for me to feel comfortable with him as her guardian." We didn't speak for the rest of the day. That evening, I called Jen to fill her in on the attorney meeting. She reiterated that she and her husband had seriously discussed it and were prepared to take Sophie if needed. They'd even started setting aside money in savings as an emergency guardian fund, in case they needed to quickly adapt their home or lifestyle. Meanwhile, Ryan called Connor to have the detailed conversation. I could hear parts of it from the other room. It did not go well. Connor apparently hadn't realized that guardianship meant full-time, permanent custody. He thought it was more like being a godparent, someone who steps in occasionally, maybe takes Sophie for weekends or summers if needed, but not sole parental responsibility. When Ryan explained the reality, that Connor would need to essentially become Sophie's parent, potentially relocate or drastically change his lifestyle, be responsible for all decisions, Connor backpedaled. "Man, I don't know if I'm ready for that," I heard Connor say through the phone. "I thought you meant like I'd help out. Not that I'd become a full-time single dad. I travel like 6 months a year for work. I don't even know how to braid hair." Ryan tried to convince him. "You'd figure it out. You'd step up. That's what family does." "Ryan, I love Sophie, but I'm not equipped to raise a kid. I don't have a stable schedule. I don't have space in my apartment. I don't even know what kids her age need. Maybe I could help financially or visit a lot, but I don't think I should be the primary guardian." I heard Ryan's desperate attempts to change Connor's mind, but Connor was firm. He'd support however he could, but he wasn't the right choice for guardian. When Ryan got off the phone, he looked devastated. "Connor doesn't want to do it," he said quietly. "I heard. He said he'd help, but he doesn't want to be the guardian." I sat down next to him. "Ryan, this is why we needed to have serious conversations before making decisions. Guardianship is enormous. Not everyone is equipped for it, and that's okay." "So your sister wins," he said bitterly. "This isn't about winning. This is about our daughter's welfare. You got what you wanted. Congratulations." He went to bed angry. I thought maybe that was the end of it. Connor had removed himself from consideration, so Jen would be the guardian by default. I was wrong. 2 days later, Ryan announced he'd been doing research and wanted to nominate his parents as guardians instead. His parents are in their late 60s. They're lovely people, but they're retired, dealing with health issues. His dad has diabetes and heart problems, his mom has arthritis, and have been very open about how exhausting they find young children now that they're older. Your parents? I said, incredulous. Ryan, they're almost 70. They've said themselves that watching Sophie for a whole weekend wears them out. They'd rise to the occasion. And their family. So is Jen. Why are you so opposed to my sister? Because she's your family, not our family. And there it was. The real issue. Ryan couldn't stand the idea of my family being chosen over his. This wasn't about what was best for Sophie. It was about family pride. Our daughter's welfare is more important than your ego, I said. Don't make this about ego. This is about keeping Sophie with my blood relatives. Why does blood matter more than who's actually best equipped to raise her? Because that's how family works. You keep kids with blood family. Sophie is my blood family too. And Jen is her aunt. Why does your side of the family automatically trump mine? We were screaming now. Sophie was at my mom's house, thank God, so she didn't witness this. Fine, Ryan shouted. If you won't agree to my family, then we won't designate a guardian at all. Let the court decide. That's insane. The court could give her to anyone. A distant relative, a foster home. Better than giving her to your sister just because you want to win. I'm trying to protect our daughter. Ryan grabbed his keys and left. He went to stay with his parents. That was 3 days ago. In those 3 days, the situation has somehow gotten worse. Ryan's mother called me, crying, asking why I thought she and her husband weren't good enough to raise their granddaughter. I tried to explain gently that it wasn't about them not being good enough. It was about age, health, and energy levels. She took it as an insult and said I thought they were too old and decrepit to care for a child. Ryan's sister, not Connor, he's wisely staying out of it, called to yell at me for rejecting the family and thinking you're better than us. She said I was being classist for preferring my sister's stable 2-parent household over Connor's artistic lifestyle. My own mother called to say that while she understands my reasoning, maybe I should compromise to save my marriage. Is this really worth fighting over? She asked. What are the actual chances something happens to both of you? My sister, on the other hand, said, you need to stand firm. This is about Sophie's life. Don't back down. Friends are split. Some think I'm being reasonable and Ryan is being irrational. Others think I should compromise. Maybe name Connor as guardian with the understanding that he'd have significant support from Ryan's parents and me sister, or something like that. But here's what bothers me most. In all of this fighting, no one is actually talking about what Sophie needs. Everyone is talking about family loyalty, ego, bloodlines, feelings. But what about the actual child who'd be affected? Then yesterday, something happened that made me realize this was even worse than I thought. I was cleaning out the garage and found an old box of Ryan stuff from before we got married. Inside was a folder with legal documents, old leases, car titles, stuff like that. And tucked in the back was a background check report on Connor from about 8 years ago. I almost put it back without reading it. It felt like snooping. But something made me open it. The report was from when Connor had applied for some kind of job or apartment that required a background check. And it showed something I never knew. Connor has a criminal record. 10 years ago, when he was 32, Connor was arrested and convicted of drug possession with intent to distribute. He served 18 months in prison. I sat in the garage, staring at this document, feeling like the ground had shifted under me. Ryan had never told me. In 6 years of marriage, through countless family gatherings and conversations about Connor, Ryan had never once mentioned that his brother was a convicted felon. I went inside and called Ryan immediately. Did you know Connor has a criminal record? Silence.
Ryan.
Did you know your brother went to prison for drug charges? How did you find that out? I found a background check in the garage. Were you ever planning to tell me? It was a long time ago. He made a mistake. He's completely clean now. That's not the point. The point is you wanted to make him our daughter's guardian, and you never told me he's a convicted felon. He's not a felon anymore. His record was sealed or expunged or whatever. Records get sealed, Ryan. They don't disappear. And this is exactly the kind of thing that matters when choosing a guardian. Courts look at this stuff. He made one mistake a decade ago.
People change.
I'm not saying they don't, but this is information I had a right to know before you tried to name him Sophie's guardian. What else haven't you told me about your brother? Nothing. There's nothing else. And it doesn't matter because Connor already said he doesn't want to be guardian anyway. But you wanted him to be, even knowing about his record. You thought that was fine information to just never mention. Because it's irrelevant. He's not that person anymore. It's not irrelevant when we're talking about who would raise our child. My God, Ryan, what if I'd said yes without knowing? What if something had happened to us, and then this came out during the guardianship process? The court might have rejected Connor, and then what? Sophie ends up in foster care while they sort out. That wouldn't happen. You don't know that. You can't guarantee that. Ryan got defensive, saying I was overreacting, that Connor's past didn't define him, that he's been completely clean for 10 years and has a stable life now. So stable he can't actually take custody of a child, I pointed out. You're being cruel. I'm being realistic. And I'm furious that you kept this from me. He hung up on me. I immediately called the estate attorney and told her what I discovered. She was very professional but made it clear. A criminal record doesn't automatically disqualify someone from being a guardian, but it's definitely something a court would consider. Depending on the charges and how long ago, it could be a significant factor. The fact that your husband didn't disclose this during our discussions is concerning. I asked what happens if we can't agree on a guardian. Then you don't name one in your will, she said. And if something happens to both of you, the court decides based on what's in the child's best interest. They'll look at family members who come forward, assess their suitability, and make a determination. It's not ideal because you lose control over who raises your child. That terrified me. The idea of leaving Sophie's fate to a court, to strangers who don't know our family or our daughter, because Ryan and I can't agree. But I also can't agree to something I don't think is right for Sophie. Last night, Ryan came home to get more clothes. We had another massive fight. He accused me of using Connor's record as an excuse to push my sister as guardian. I accused him of keeping secrets and prioritizing family loyalty over our daughter's welfare. He said I was paranoid and controlling. I said he was being stubborn and irrational. At one point, his mother called him while he was there. I could hear her voice through the phone, saying things like, "That woman doesn't respect our family and she thinks she's better than us." Ryan didn't defend me. He just said, "I know, Mom. I know." That hurt more than anything. When he left, he said, "Maybe we should take a break. Not divorce, just, I need space to think about whether this marriage can work if you're going to disrespect my family like this." I was stunned. You're threatening our marriage over this? You're the one who won't compromise. There's no compromise on who raises our child. It's either someone appropriate or it's not. Your definition of appropriate conveniently only includes your family. That's not true. If Connor didn't have a record and was actually equipped to raise a child, I'd consider him. If your parents were younger and healthier, I'd consider them. But they're not and he isn't, and you're asking me to agree to something I think could harm our daughter. Then I guess we're at an impasse, he said, and left. That was last night. This morning, I woke up to a text from Ryan's sister. "Hope you're happy. You're destroying a family because you're a controlling bitch who has to have everything her way." I've also gotten calls from 2 of Ryan's cousins, both telling me I need to respect family and stop being difficult. My own family is supportive, but my mother keeps saying, "Is this really worth losing your marriage over?" And I keep asking myself the same question. What if Ryan is right and I'm being paranoid? What if I'm destroying my marriage over a hypothetical situation that will probably never happen? The odds of both Ryan and me dying while Sophie is still a minor are statistically very low. But then I think, if the odds are so low, why can't Ryan just agree to Jen as guardian? Why is he willing to blow up our marriage over this if it's such an unlikely scenario? And I think about what message it sends to give in. That Ryan can keep major secrets, try to make unilateral decisions about our daughter, and then threaten our marriage when I don't agree, and I'll back down to keep the peace. My therapist, yes, I started seeing one this week, says this isn't really about the guardianship. It's about power, control, respect, and communication in our marriage. She says the guardianship dispute is revealing deeper problems that were probably already there. She's probably right. But that doesn't help me figure out what to do now. So Reddit, AITA, for refusing to agree to my husband's brother as our daughter's guardian, especially now that I know he has a criminal record my husband never told me about? Am I destroying my family over something that will probably never matter? Or am I standing up for my daughter's welfare against a husband who's prioritizing family ego over what's actually best for her?